Manuel Marques Pereira, Chief IOM Somalia. Welcome to Arlaadi Media.
A pleasure. Good morning.
Good morning. Thank you. Can you please give us an overview about IOM's priorities and key programs in Somalia?
Thank you. IOM Somalia, part of the global structure of IOM, aligns with our strategic objectives for the near future. We have three main objectives. The first one is improve humanitarian assistance and save lives. That incorporates all the work that IOM globally and particularly in Somalia do in terms of humanitarian assistance and immediately support to communities affected by crisis, either conflict, disasters. We can include the drought and climate change on it. Our second objective is to strive to create solutions for displacement. IOM is one of the organizations worldwide with responsibilities on the coordination of the displacement inside countries. And we have taken as an objective for the next couple of years to help communities, authorities at all levels, including the federal government, to support the creation of solutions to end displacement. At the same time that we also work on the prevention and the management of displacement in the countries. And the third objective that IOM has set, the third key priority, is for sure the creation and the strengthening of migration pathways, the regular pathways of migration, to ensure that communities that receive and communities that are the origin of migration can use migration as a positive tool, and that people are protected in their journeys and in the places where they will arrive. In Somalia, we would add the strengthening of our cooperation with the federal government, which is very important for us. And that strengthening has to do with how IOM aligns with the National Transformation Plan and how IOM work aligns with the different parts of the government of Somalia in which we are engaged or we are cooperating. So these are the big objectives. And I think that the recent agreement we signed with the Ministry of Foreign Affairs to structure that partnership clearly indicates where we are going and what we need to do in support of the government and the communities in Somalia. So from our side, this is the big perspective of where we want to be in the next couple of years.
Thank you so much. That is a lot of portfolio, and that is key areas we will discuss in our interview. How does initiatives in Somalia align it with the federal government of Somalia's development and recovery strategy?
So IOM is an organization of the UN system that works very closely with governments. And because we are an organization that mainly does projects, our projects are usually designed in cooperation with the governments to respond to problems or support that the government at all levels, federal government, state government, provincial, district, or community level have. And so I think that that's one of the strengths of IOM, working together to create a mechanism to address these challenges means that we are very responsive to the priorities of the country. In terms of humanitarian assistance, which is the focus of this, IOM is one of the largest providers of humanitarian assistance globally, and Somalia is one of the countries of that portfolio. In the interest of protecting people on the move and people that are moving, the essence of the work that we do has to deal with people running from conflict, people running from floods and from droughts, and then being able to create the humanitarian services that support the services that the government does, in support of SODMA, in support of NCRI. So working with the partners of the federal government that can deliver jointly services to protect, assist, and guarantee the welfare of populations on the move that have been affected by crisis. That's essentially how we align with the government. Joint work and, of course, joint design of responses to the problems that Somalia and the Somali communities face.
Thank you so much. Doing these or implementing these a huge portfolio, it comes with a lot of obstacles. So, what are the biggest challenges facing IOM Somalia in implementing its programs in Somalia?
So I think challenges are a constant of life, right? But here in Somalia, and despite the tremendous achievements that the country has had in the last 10, 15 years, because we need to acknowledge that the Somali communities and its governments have done a lot, and the international community has supported significant transformations. We have a work that needs to continue in the future. Some of the challenges that we see are the growing humanitarian needs. We have gone very far, but humanitarian needs are still very big. Somalia, as a country that did very little to contribute to the climate crisis, is one of the most affected countries in the world. And those impacts reflect on stronger droughts, worse floods, water scarcity, collapse of livelihoods in agriculture and livestock terms. So that challenge is yet not overcome. We still are catching up with the resilience of the Somali communities vis-a-vis the climate shocks and these disasters that happen. That's a big challenge. We need to invest more on that resilience so that people across the country can cope better with the impact of the climate crisis and other disasters. The second challenge is, of course, resources to do this, right? The larger the disaster, the larger the humanitarian needs of the populations, the higher the costs. And so, in a time where resources are not necessarily abundant at large, uh, because of too many competing crises around the world, that constrains the way we work. And so we need to find new ways of working, we need to find new partnerships and keep being smart on how investments are made so that they are transformative and not just an ongoing cycle of support. The third big challenge is access and security. As we know, the situation of accessibility and physical security of populations is still a challenge in the context of the conflict in the country. And without peace and stability, it's very difficult to create the services that populations need to be able to to be how to say this, to be well and live and be able to be supported by the state on their daily needs. That's a big one that we need to see how over the next couple of months we can try to contribute. And the third one, I think that it relates with a diversion. As I said before, if we consider the growing number of disasters and the impacts of climate change, and we associate the impacts of conflict and lack of access, it's more important that the resources that are available arrive to the right persons and to the persons in most need. We won't be able to support everyone, and so the resources need to go to the persons most affected, most in need. And that effort is a constant effort. Avoid a diversion, strengthen the understanding of the needs of communities, how to do better programs, how to do programs more significant. So this is one of the challenges that comes by the combination of the previous. But there's a lot of potential for change. IOM is deeply committed with this. The government and the communities of at all levels support. We have different layers of monitoring, different layers of talking to people. So we keep on a daily basis fighting a diversion and making sure that we access the right places to provide the right support to the persons that need the most.
Thank you so much. As you tell, humanitarian need is one of the key challenges. And Donald Trump comes in the second term, and how his plan of cutting aid to the world could affect Somalia, specifically IOM Somalia's contribution to Somalia?
Well, IOM does support the countries at many levels, the donor countries, the receiving countries, in line with their policies. It's not for IOM to discuss the policies of member states. There are significant investments of the US government in Somalia through IOM, and we continue an open dialogue with the government of the United States on how these resources better serve their political objectives and the aspirations of the government in relation with their contribution to the future of Somalia. IOM, as in any other part of the world, adjusts its programming and adjusts its relations with member states to make sure that the bridge between the needs on the ground, the political and objectives of the donors, and the involvement of the federal and the state level governments is combined. And so our role is to help facilitate these three dimensions and create positive impacts in Somalia. We will continue to do that job with any administration of any government. Somalia has many friends of many donor nations. IOM has a wide portfolio of partnerships, and we think that we will be able to continue providing the best support we can through that portfolio.
Thank you so much. And aid diversion is also one of the key obstacles. As Arlaadi Media, we have made an investigation with conclusion of huge corruption in aid support to the people who need it. So what are mechanisms can IOM Somalia to prevent this happen again and again?
I think that there are many efforts that IOM does, but there are efforts that need to be done by the government and by the communities, right? The first way to ensure that aid arrives to the ones that most need sits on understanding who these individuals are, right? So we see with very good eyes the efforts for universal registration that the government has. An ID card is a very powerful tool in relation to guaranteeing access to services and to rights. So IOM sees that as a key tool in the future for that to achieve, and that's the federal government and the state governments. There is a part that corresponds to the communities. The communities need support, but they also exist within social economical relationships, right? Aid diversion is haram, and it needs to be understood as wrong and immoral. It cannot be a fee, it cannot be a tax, it cannot be a part of business as usual or normal relations. And because it's immoral, we need all pieces to accept that. People need to understand that it's okay to say no, and then turn to IOM in the international community and ask support to guarantee that that no does not have consequences. So IOM does a lot of field work to assess at individual person what are those needs so that we can measure who needs the most. We do screening of our partnerships with a strong due diligence to understand the organizations that partner with us, if they have the same values and respect the same processes that we do to ensure that the aid arrives in the right place. So that is improving who works with us. Our workforce, which in the majority are Somalis, are all very invested in fighting corruption and aid diversion, and so they are open to be contacted by people to raise the problem and the challenges so that we act. And the third and final layer is the processes that IOM has internally on zero tolerance to aid diversion and corruption, and that sits on a communication with all levels of the system. We have a complaint feedback mechanisms, we do direct monitoring, we do remote monitoring in which we have Somali colleagues that call our beneficiaries in privacy and confidence for allowing them to report bad practices. And so, if the system brings all of these pieces together, we will over time be able to fight a diversion. But we need the government, the communities, and the international community to work together to strengthen the system. And of course, I think that one of the issues with a diversion is the size of the needs that exist in Somalia. So the more impact we have, the lower the needs, the less the potential for a diversion, because we will be able to assist who needs the most in a smaller universe of people in need. And I've seen significant improvements in Somalia in relation to a diversion. I think Somali communities across the country have very strongly come forward and contacted our services and raised concerns about gatekeepers, raised concerns about irregular taxation. And so we start seeing some changes. So I think we are on the right way, but there's still a lot of work to be done in the future.
Thank you so much. Let me emphasize in that point. There are unverified reports who are saying that government officials and also some part of international partners are involved in aid diversion. So, how, as IOM Somalia, can you make sure that this practice will end very soon?
So, as I said before, this is a process that is ongoing, right? One of the key parts is we need to change the mindset. Aid diversion is wrong, is not an acceptable demand from communities that need our collective support. But we need communities to reach out to us and to say that these situations are happening, and then we can act and we can investigate and we can understand how to stop it from happening again. That is the learning, right? The big effort is to create space and trust for communities to grab the phone and say they have a problem, or for when we call them, they feel comfortable. We have seen that the notion that aid diversion is wrong is starting to allow persons to complain, right, about government, about international partners, about IOM. No one in the system is exempt from being part of this. We're all human, and we will not always have correct practices. My job as the head of IOM is to guarantee that we have the mechanisms to stop those practices and have the mechanisms to correct when these practices happen. And we have robust systems of investigation, of accountability, of reporting lines. And so I think by keep doing this, we strengthen the system, but listening to the needs of communities, listening to what support they need, so that is the most effective, is also a very important way to prevent a diversion, right? When we support communities with a water well, we are creating a mechanism for the community to be resilient and be able to do their livelihood, right? So that means that we may not need to give them a cash grant because they can create a livelihood. So by doing the water well, we are reducing already the opportunity for someone to come and ask money from individuals. Or the reverse. By giving cash to people, we allow communities to make better choices, and we avoid someone to remove part of the assistance before it arrives to communities. So there are multiple ways of doing this. I don't lie, so it's a work in progress and is a day-to-day effort to make sure that we can be most effective.
Thank you so much. On immigration and reintegration is also one of the key priorities of IOM Somalia. Recently, Somalia welcomed over 130 migrants who were stranded in Libya. So how does IOM support these returnees in terms of reintegration and livelihood opportunities?
So this program is a program that we do. Well, this activity we do with many countries. The returns that you have just talked were done with the support of the European Union and the Ministry of Foreign Affairs and the different branches of the government that have supported us into ensuring a connection with the Embassy of Somalia in Libya and the identification of people that are willing to return to Somalia. When communities, when individuals arrive to Somalia, and even before, sometimes there are challenges, medical issues, mental welfare issues, basic needs issues that our activities of supporting the move cover. But more importantly, after people have arrived in the country, we try to connect them with the government of Somalia and the different parts of the government that are responsible for identification, health, education, social protection. Because it's important that people coming in are integrated in Somali society and are again seen as an active member of the community. Second is to create opportunities for individuals to set their own businesses, for individuals to change their skills and their employment profile so that they are able to join the workforce and to join business opportunities in Somalia. We also work with companies and businessmen to create opportunities for returnees to engage in employments that exist in Somalia. It's very important to IOM that these returns are successful, that people regain hope, that people regained joy on their lives and on the contribution they can do to the future of Somalia. And so we are there to support them over time. We are there to engage with them and try that in the months following their return, they know they have someone that can listen and someone that can try to guide them on their reintegration. And that's the pillar, yes? Support to reintegration in many levels, but guaranteeing that every returnee finds his place in the bigger family that is the Somalian community in country.
Somalia has one of the largest internally displaced populations in the world. And in those ID camps in the capital of Mogadishu, there are many cases of rape and sex exploitations. And reports also claiming that federal government soldiers are involved. So how IOM is addressing the needs of IDPs, particularly in terms of shelter, health, education, and these crises, as I told previously.
So, first, IOM has a zero tolerance policy in relation to sexual exploitation and abuse to our beneficiaries, but within our own staff at all levels, right? And with that comes a very robust disciplinary process for staff and the partners that engage with us. And that is created by having not only trainings and awareness of how and what constitutes sexploitation and abuse, but also on how people safely can report to IOM. It's a confidential process. It goes straight up the hierarchy of IOM to our focal points, and it doesn't pass through the rest of the colleagues of IOM. It's a dedicated service, a dedicated line to protect individuals and give confidentiality. For the reduction of the risk of exploitation and abuse, as you said, we work on different sectors, right? Improving shelters, creating privacy conditions, increasing access to health, guaranteeing that people are informed that aid is free. There is absolutely no taxation on any service that IOM provides, as humanitarian assistance. So all the activities we do, access to water, distribution of cash, shelter construction, protection activities, livelihoods, they're all free. IOM does not charge any money. IOM does not issue receipts. And so the more people are aware of this, the safer they are. It's quite challenging because the volume of the population that is displaced is very high. As crises are ongoing, these numbers grow, the needs are higher, the resources are reducing, not growing. So it's a constant battle against time to guarantee that the prevention of this exploitation is our first action. And then the reduction of the risks is the second, being that the third line is these communication channels that are open for everyone to report so that we can disciplinary fight. So it's again a system with multi-layers that we need to be very aware, and it's not because we don't hear it that it doesn't exist. It's still a taboo to talk about these issues. So IOM very gently and in the one-on-one conversations with communities tries to guarantee to people that if you report, we will take action and we will do so in privacy, but we need communities to report. And we are committed to make sure that we fight as hard as we can against exploitation and abuse.
Thank you so much. Climate-related displacement is become a growing issue in Somalia. How is IOM adapting its programs to address this emerging challenge?
Well, so that's actually one of my favorite topics. I'm an environmental engineer, and before coming to Somalia, I was the chief climate policy for IOM global in our headquarters. And I came to Somalia because I think it's the right place to be to support communities and the government to tackle these issues. As we see the increase of the impact of climate change is aggravating disasters, namely droughts or floods. And those disasters, because of the lack of resilience of communities to the size of the disaster, creates more IDPs. So the solution is not humanitarian assistance. The solution is resilience through development that can create resilience to climate change. So when a road is being done, the road needs to be done with the idea that in the future, if there are floods in this area, the road needs to be more resilient. When we do an agricultural project for the livelihoods of a returnee or an IDP that has left the camp, that agriculture is the agriculture for the future in case there is a drought, so that the species that are cultivated are stronger. So a lot of the way to address climate displacement is how we make displacement to stop in the future, but the now is how we help people move from displacement to that resilient solution. So these two dimensions, solutions to a better future and prevention of displacement. No one should be displaced. Every life displaced is a life destroyed. Humanitarian assistance should come only on the extreme cases that we cannot protect and give capacity of resilience to individuals. So the big investment to the climate challenge in Somalia is to create a future that can cope with climate change, reducing the disasters, because disasters are not natural. Disasters are social economical phenomena. Is the economical capacity and the strength of the government structure that creates the reduction of the vulnerabilities that allow people to be resilient to climate. Because if your house is strong because it was built following a code to protect it from collapse, if there is floods, the house will not collapse. If the house is built in a place, you will not build a house in the middle of a river that is dry but can come fill. So there are all of these steps to reduce vulnerabilities, to protect people from in the future being exposed to a disaster. And that is how we overcome the challenges of climate change in Somalia. And the Somali communities are resilient, but climate change and disasters are growing in the frequency, the number of times they occur, and they are increasing on the impact, the scale that they have, longer months of drought, higher volume of flood. So I think we are in a very critical moment where the resilience of the Somali communities is being tested beyond the limits of the resources they have. So we need to inject more resources and capacities so that we can keep and try to change the future.
How the stabilization program that IOM is conducting in Somalia can address the migration challenges?
Well, I think the stabilization, there are two points there. One is stabilizing communities means less attractivity for people to be mobilized for violence or for people to be mobilized for irregular activities because they have opportunities. So all the efforts of stabilization is to reignite the social contract between those communities and the different levels of the state so that they feel they are part of Somalia, of the construction of the future of Somalia, and they can have their rights protected and they can have access to services. So that's a big investment in terms of stabilization. The second one is to contribute to create economical development and infrastructures that support that process of the social contract. A lot of the things that will be needed in the future in terms of stabilization is obviously roads, education, health, access to businesses. And when we talk about access to businesses, we also talk about how resources are managed, mainly natural resources, water, land. We can talk about those two. So for the future of peace in Somalia, the issues about land and property, the issues about water management are two components that need to be addressed so that their management contributes to stability, contributes to peace, and ignites social economical opportunities, right? And so when we talk about, for example, one of our programs called Environmental Peace Building that actually last year received an innovation award from IOM, that project within the stabilization portfolio tries to bring people together to talk about their differences. Then discusses with those same individuals how among them they manage the most important natural resources for their day-to-day. And when that is achieved, it tries to create and accelerate how the management of those resources creates economical opportunities. And by creating economical opportunities, there is more prosperity, thus less conflict. And so we are closing the cycle of violence and conflict and disagreements by creating a cycle of prosperity and giving roles in the day-to-day to more people instead of a very limited number of persons. And that's how I think stabilization is moving forward in Somalia.
Somalia has Somali population more than 17 or more than 18 youth, and these youth is those involved in the conflict, and those youth are also involved in the migration. So apart from projects, how IOM Somalia can advocate for Somali youth is in order to not involve conflict and also involve immigration?
Well, we feel that sometimes challenges of youth exist all over the world and always existed. Generations have different ways of living the times, and on being part of the times. In Somalia, two things to me are very important. The first is the voice of youth. We need more youth represented at the different government structures, at the different parts of the state, so that they feel represented, right? The same way with women, the same way with minorities, the same way or people with disabilities. It's creating space for these groups to be visible and to be part of the group that makes decisions for the country so that they feel represented. And second is look for activities and direct engagement to their aspirations. And that means in many cases how in a day-to-day with social media, people don't want the same jobs of the past, the same agriculture, the same factory work. They want new jobs. And I think technology has the potential to create that. So stimulating youth to be innovative, to be entrepreneurial, to use technology, to be part of society and finding solutions to the problems of Somalia. We see many times some youth members that have great ideas, but they do not have the capacity to put those ideas in place. Why? Because the system or the resources do not see eye to eye with them, right? There's a very strong parallel with that, with the access to climate finance. So we need people to access finance, youth and climate affected people, so that they can be part of that response. That's a bit the challenge that we are facing, is how do we create these new opportunities so that the youth is part of the future of Somalia and avoids the radicalization or avoids the youth to move into a path of violence. Is giving them a seat at the table is a top priority. And sometimes it's engagement in sports, other times is engagement on interviews like we are doing now. There's many different ways that do not need to be a project, a training, a chunk of cash, right? It's a more complex relation that we need to establish.
Thank you so much. On security, a new EU mission in Somalia, AUSOM, has already started. So, how this new mission could affect or impact the IOM Somalia program in Somalia in terms of preventing insecurity, promoting stabilization, and also empowering youth and women.
So IOM works very closely with the current mission, and we hope to work very closely with the future mission within the UN family system that we belong. We see the mission as one of the tools to create the conditions for access and for security that we depend to serve communities. It's not the only one, but is one of the ones that are relevant. And so we will continue to cooperate with all the branches of the mission during the mission and during the transition process that is ongoing. IOM is part of the conversations between the government and the mission on the transition and with the other parts of the UN. So we will continue engaged in this process, but we also see in terms of security that the safer the country is, with the mission and with other actors, the better we can do our job, the better we can serve Somalia. So that's in what we are invested. What are the opportunities that will maximize our capacity to support?
On a breast issue in Somalia, it is one of the most present issue. So how or what are mechanisms that does IOM Somalia have in order to protect Somali journalists from conflict-related cases and also promote press freedom in Somalia?
So IOM believes that the media is a fundamental part of a healthy state, right? A country without freedom of the press is a country with limitations. IOM will continue to be invested in guaranteeing that in Somalia we open these channels, right? So engaging with you and your colleagues in different medium is a big part of our day-to-day. The more we give information about how our work is, the better the media can scrutinize what we do and can help us find the problems that exist. But media also helps us to understand better the complexities and the different points of view in the country. So IOM looks at the media as a source of triangulation of information so that we can play our role. We are not here to judge what the media says and the perspective of the media. We are here to listen to the different parts and then try to contribute as best we can for this growth of Somalia and for the stability in Somalia. And that, I think, is very important. Misinformation and disinformation are two serious risks for the safety of Somalia, and they can only be fought with truth and with information that is transparent and that is clear. And I think it's this push that we need to do. We need to keep saying what we do, why do we do it, how we are reaching people, what we cannot do, because that is one thing that many organizations, including IOM, sometimes fails. We need to be honest. We cannot do everything, but we can do this, and that means then we are accountable for what we are doing, that activity, and the media plays a role on help us share this information and sometimes to tell us what we have not seen. And then we will need to make action. Sometimes the action is true. Other times the reports may be not so true or may be more nuanced. But IOM is always willing to listen and then reconsider on how things are operating. But media in the today's society is clearly a very important part of keeping the balance within the broader system.
Illegal arrest and attempts of censorship that are undertaken by Somali government is one of the key obstacles the Somali journalists are facing. IOM Somalia as a key partner for Somalia press freedom. What are mechanisms that IOM Somalia will do in order to pressure Somali government to not involve such actions?
So, as I said, IOM has a constitution, and as members of the UN family, we are committed with effective ways of communicating between different parties, right? Our conversations with the government of Somalia are centered on ensuring that Somalia fulfills its potential. And there are things that are not necessarily agreeable internationally in Somalia, in any other country. But the government of Somalia is also sovereign. So I think the best contribution that IOM can do is to keep talking with the government of Somalia on how we see the problems and listening to how they see the problems and making a balance. Very rarely, there's only one answer and one perspective of any issue. And what IOM advocates worldwide is listen. Because when we listen to the others and we understand their grievances, our responses and our support is better. And this is a fundamental thing that we do in Somalia. As I said before in the interview, listen to communities, offer a channel for communities to talk, and then we bring that information to the government and to the partners. And we try, with that sharing of information, to unblock very rigid views that may or not exist from both sides. And we think the reporters are part of that dynamic, And that's why we are always very willing to engage directly with reporters like you and your team so that we understand your perspective and then we can contribute to this broader dialogue. That's what an organization like IOM can do in terms of its support to all levels of the Somali community.
Two more final questions. What are the messages would you like to share with Somali people regarding IOM's mission and its commitment to improve their life with this?
So, IOM main priority in Somalia is to contribute to help Somalia move forward in its economical resilience and its social economical equity, right? A more prosperous Somalia where everyone has a voice and is part of the construction of the Somali government at all levels, from the village level to the federal government. That's our mission. Support the Somali communities in this journey. We do this with the resources that other countries provide to support Somalia. So the other role we have is how we present Somalia, how we talk about the problems of Somalia. And the third way how we do this is to continue being open to listen to all levels on things we may be doing wrong or things that people would like to change or feedback that we should receive to rethink how we do. So these three levels are our commitment to the people of Somalia, and we will continue to try and make sure it happens.
And also, what is your message to international community in order to give a better support to IOM Somalia's mission in Somalia?
I think the message to the international community is first, thank them for their support to Somalia so far. I think that the Somali communities, the government of Somalia, and the international community has done together a lot for Somalia in the last 15 years. It has moved very, very far, but it's not enough. And so the second part of the message beyond the thank them is to say, let's not forget Somalia. Somalia needs more support. We probably need to change the way we do certain things. We probably need to reflect on how the problems that Somalia faces can be better solved, but definitely we need support. Somalia needs support. Somalia is a country of people with a lot of joy of living, with a lot of energy, with a lot of entrepreneurship. It would be an attack on our collective humanity, not contributing to make this country peaceful and prosperous, or further and more peaceful and prosperous. So that's my message for the international community. Let's all believe in Somalia. Let's all help Somalia go very far, because it can go very far.
IOM Somalia Chief of Mission, Mr. Manuel Perez. Thank you for talking to Arlaadi Media.
A pleasure. It was my pleasure.